right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me make sure my mic's working here. Okay. All right. I hope everybody is having a wonderful Monday. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to be covering the Mercedes Vegas case. Finally, there has been some traction. There has been an arrest made. This is a case that kind of went unsolved for over a year and has a lot of working elements to it. So we are going to go over it. If you're new to the case, we'll cover the backstory. And yeah, it is. See a lot of people saying fantastic news. It is because it's. Those that are not familiar with the case, there is a lot of moving parts to this, and it's a tragedy that this story didn't gain more traction. I am really surprised not more people covered it. But we'll get right into it because there's a lot to go over, and there's still at least another suspect to be arrested in this case. So it's still not completely solved, but I think like all the dominoes are finally falling. So very excited for the family because they've been very outspoken, and this poor girl that got just brutally murdered. Just trigger warning now for those who aren't familiar with this case. It is terrible what happened to this poor girl, and I'm just so glad that they finally are getting answers, and the people responsible are going to get the justice. So let's get right into it. Oh, actually, sorry, 1 second. Oh, back up. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Real quick, because I know we got some people probably watching from Arizona, and we always like to give back by featuring missing people. So this is Kelly Conklin. I hope I pronounced that right. Missing November 17th. That is 8 days ago. Kelly may go by the name Tiffany, and in the notes, sorry, I know you guys can't see him, but it's really small. Give me 1 second here. Says Tiffany was last seen on 7th Ave and Camelback Road. She may be with another missing teen boy. That's not good. She is unfamiliar with Phoenix area and may be heading back to Tempe or Chandler area. Last seen were blue jeans, a fuzzy vest, white shoes, and a black trash bag of belongings. I wonder if this is maybe a runaway situation. Tiffany's family is concerned for her safety. She is at risk and vulnerable. If you have any information, you can call 602-262-6151. Once more, that is Kelly, who also can go by Tiffany, missing out of Phoenix, Arizona, just 14 years old. Yeah, she doesn't. She definitely looks a little bit older. And yeah, that's kind of concerning. Missing with, let me read that again. Missing with another teen boy, but it doesn't give a name. All right, let's get into it. Again, thank you to all my wonderful mods, Sensei D, Copper Horse, good to see you. I know Jennifer on Mondays is kind of busy. She had a birthday last week, so happy late birthday to Jennifer. And also, speaking of Jennifer, she's actually the one that introduced me to this case. And again, I just cannot believe more people haven't covered this because even now, having more answers, there's still a lot of mystery behind this case of like what fully happened and how they pulled this off because it is a lot. And so let me clear this real quick. Oh, thanks, Tittlesworth. Yeah, there's a lot of people that go missing out of Arizona. I don't know what it is. So, with Mercedes Vega's story, for those who are not familiar, 22 years old. Now, she wanted to become a personal trainer, but she was working part-time as a dancer at a club. I think it's called the Gentleman's Club, which is in, I believe, Tempe, Arizona. She also had 5 siblings, so a lot of I'm not sure the count, brothers and sisters. I'm not sure what it was, but got a lot of family, and of course the parents are amazing, very strong, and have been so outspoken to get justice for her. But they've talked about her a lot. And again, it's just wild that this case never got the attention I think it deserved. So let's get into it, and then we'll get into all the moving parts because there's so much. Yeah, she was very beautiful. I have a little clip where she's kind of laughing with her mother, and she's got this contagious laugh.
Considering staying in for the night, but there were several people asking her to come out and meet them.
So, actually, let me just back this up real quick so we can just get the timeline here. Make sure my thing's full here. So,
what was your understanding?
April of 2023, she had gone to a Chipotle, and then she was heading back to her condos at the Aubrey Plaza, which is about less than 2 miles away. She went to the Chipotle, I think, around 7 p.m., and then she went to her apartment, and then sometime around, I think, 9 p.m., she went to go to leave, and then she was attacked. So let's listen to what the story is here from her parents.
Of what she was doing that day, that evening.
It's a wild one.
We knew she had gone to Chipotle and gotten food and gone back up to her apartment. And we believe at that point, or I believe at that point,
this is her mother speaking.
She was probably just considering staying in for the night, but there were several people asking her to come out and meet them. And ultimately, she made the worst decision to leave her apartment. And I believe that there was something there waiting for her.
So what we're looking at is a map from where she had driven to. That's her apartment, and she's caught on surveillance at 9:15. She was going to leave. She was going to go to, I believe, Dave & Buster's to meet up with some friends. So here you can see her dressed casually. And there's an underground parking garage at this Aubrey Plaza. And there's even more backstory we'll get into that was released earlier this year that was really shocking, but added more to the story and possibly a motive, which still hasn't been completely revealed, but I think we could speculate to what it was. But so she was going to go to Dave & Buster's, and so she's seen here on the surveillance, which will show. Of course, it's a static camera, which it doesn't move, so we only see her just walking. But as she comes out of the frame, she would be attacked. She was walking to her car.
It all began on the night of April 16th. The Pillsburys showing us this surveillance footage of Mercedes walking into her Tempe apartment parking garage just after 9 p.m.
Yeah.
She was on her way to meet friends.
You can see when she comes out that she does not have a care in the world. She's not paying attention to her surroundings.
She's dressed to go to Dave & Buster's.
That's why Tom believes she had no idea she was in danger when she left.
Yeah, we won't get too much into the details, obviously, but we will cover them. We won't go extensively, but there is some, disturbing stuff that happened to her.
On
That's
April
why
6th.
It's really surprising that this case hasn't been more covered by more content creators, because it is, even though now we know a lot more, there's still more mystery to this case, and there's still at least one more, maybe two more suspects that need to be arrested because so many moving pieces.
17th, 2023 at about 12:30 in the morning.
So this is a guy talking about what they found. So she was abducted at 9:15. Now, later that night, almost basically the next day, but it's just after midnight. So about 3 hours after she was abducted, they get notified of a burning car many miles away. I forget the exact miles, but I do have them. Off this freeway, off this Interstate 10 in Tonopah, and there's this burning car, and sadly, she's inside it.
Department of Public Safety received a 911 call about a car that was on fire. This incident took place outside of Tonopah, Arizona, about 10 miles west of the Tonopah exit off of Interstate 10 near milepost 85.
He was like down in the bushes, but I saw a flame inside the vehicle.
Okay, they're on the westbound I-10.
Are you talking about Dave and Buster's or the Culinary Dropout? Because there's two. Dave and Buster's, I've never been to. If you're asking about Dave and Buster's, I think so. Dave and Buster's, isn't that where they have like the arcade stuff and American food? I've never had the chance to go to one, but unless you're talking about the Culinary Dropout, because there's going to be two areas, and that one's American food and a bar as well. Now, the scene you're seeing here is actually from a different scene. I'm just playing the 911 report, but what you're actually seeing is just kind of what would be like a recreation.
Yes. Yeah, just
So this is not the actual car.
I don't really know what it is. I couldn't tell you.
This is the actual car, but we wouldn't know that until earlier this year, but we'll talk about it.
Unknown vehicle. Okay. Anyone? You said there's people outside the vehicle?
I believe I saw at least one person outside, yes. He was like...
So they would find a burning car. Somebody called it in because they saw it. And so they, of course, EMS is called in. They arrive. And sadly, they find her kind of burned alive. Her actual death was inhalation of the smoke. But there was a lot more that was done to her. So just kind of trigger warning here. I'll take you so much, Gopher. Same to you, Go. Same to everybody.
In the early morning hours of April 17th, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office says Mercedes Vega was found in a burning car off the I-10 near Tonopah. Now we know exactly how she died. According to the medical examiner's report True Crime Arizona obtained, Mercedes was shot in the arm, hit in the head, had bleach in her throat, and eventually died from smoke inhalation while being burned alive in that car.
Now kind of knowing when we get a little bit further into the story, I really think, because, you know, the whole bleach down the throat, which is very disturbing, I think this was kind of a staged crime scene, in my opinion, to make it look like they were covering something else up, you know, with the bleach in the throat, and her, you know, kind of working, on the side as a dancer and stuff, that maybe she was assaulted. But as we learn more of the backstory, I don't think that's the case. So I think they did this to try to stage it to look at like one thing, but we're going to find out, I believe it's another. But this still, of course, this is still terrible. We'll kind of go over the timeline.
Her parents believe death wasn't the ultimate goal, and she paid the price for fighting back.
Why would you not just shoot her in the parking garage?
She was tortured. Ultimately, that if there's no other way.
And that's her parents there, sadly. I think their
Mercedes'
last name
car
is
would be
Pillsbury.
found the next day after her abduction and murder. Vega's Charger was found.
And this is where it gets weird. So they found her car. So this is where it got really confusing because, remember, she's walking to her car in a parking garage and she's abducted. And they find her in a burning car. But the car that she's found in is not her car. It's a different car. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. But her actual Dodge Charger was parked at this Culinary Dropout about 2 miles away, which is interestingly not far from the Chipotle where she left earlier that day, where I think there's a possible connection, and I'll talk about that. Like I said, there's so many moving parts.
Found not far from her home. It was parked illegally next to a restaurant about 2 miles from where she lived. This homicide, and how it took several vehicles. To achieve this likely meant at least 2 suspects were involved.
So yeah, it was just parked, apparently they say illegally. They found it pretty quickly the next day after they found her body. And so here's the culinary dropout. I'm not sure if it was kind of parked maybe out on this road somewhere. I'm assuming but it just said it was parked illegally. Of course, it was abandoned. Now, they towed it away. From what I understand, I don't think the family has ever received it back. I'm assuming because it's still an open investigation. So we don't know what belongings, because her phone was missing. I think her purse. There's a lot of stuff that's missing. So I'm assuming maybe those items are in the car. I'm not sure. I'm sure eventually we'll get more answers. It is just 22 years old.
Just into our newsroom tonight, new developments in the Mercedes Vega murder investigation 1 day before the 1-year mark of her death. That is where we begin tonight. The 22-year-old was found dead in a burning car off the I-10 in Tonopah.
The medical examiner ruled her death homicide, and that's remained unsolved to this day. But tonight, we've learned new details about where this investigation stands. True crime correspondent Brianna Whitney.
So this happened obviously in April of 2023. We're now in 2024, almost finishing it. And so there was almost a whole year with no real progress. And then there is starting to be little tidbits early, in this year as it kind of played out. And then we learned a backstory that the parents would eventually share that would really start to kind of connect some of these odd things here.
He's been following this case closely this past year. Brianna, what's the latest tonight?
We now know there was a change in where Mercedes said she was going last, and the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office revealed there's surveillance footage of a key moment in this case that may provide a lead to detectives. Take a look at this. This is the last known video we have of Mercedes Vega leaving her Tempe apartment complex heading into the parking garage. Her family tells us her car was found abandoned at the culinary dropout in Tempe, but they say she didn't drive it there. Tonight, MCSO confirming they have surveillance video showing Mercedes' car arriving in the roadway and being left there until detectives discovered it. Originally, loved ones told us Mercedes was on her way that night to meet friends for dinner, but just revealed by investigators, they learned through interviews Mercedes abruptly canceled those plans just before her disappearance.
Now, this, I wanted to play this because I did announce this a bunch of times, but the parents came out more recently and said, no, that was not true. She was just going to go to Dave & Buster's, because there was something where they said that she was actually going to go to the club. But as you can see how she's dressed, she's just looks like to go out with friends, not to go. I don't know, what she'd be wearing. Before she goes to the club or whatever. I'm assuming regular clothes until she goes and dresses there. But anyway, I just wanted to play that and say that the family did come out and say it's Dave & Buster's.
And instead, her last communication was telling somebody she was planning to go to work. We know she worked a couple nights a week as an exotic dancer. MCSO telling us they've served search warrants on accounts and devices, and through that started working with other law enforcement agencies, including known associates to Mercedes Vega, investigating those and other ties that led to her death.
So we'll jump a little bit forward here, but we're actually going to go back in the past of some incidents that happened that will now connect to this murder, because there was a lot, again, we didn't know, and this year it's been kind of slowly filtering, new updates or details about this case. I keep saying the chat's disconnected. I'm going to plug in my my Ethernet real quick. So give me, and this is so wild, Tittlesworth. Let me put this full screen for a second so I can plug in my Ethernet, because I can see the chat keeps getting disconnected.
Tomorrow, on the anniversary of.
Here's just a short clip of Vega spending time with family and having fun.
I'll be right back.
Please do it again. His head is so big. And he went skydiving. Please do it again. His head is.
Wasn't the ultimate goal, and she paid the price for fighting back.
Why would you not just shoot her in the parking garage.
She was tortured. Ultimately, that if there's no other way you can say this, this, and this.
Her parents say she danced at a club 2 nights a week, and they are working to learn if her death was tied to somebody who met her at work and if there are other victims involved.
And it seems like there is kind of a connection to her work, which we're going to kind of dive into. So I'm going to fast forward there. But as you see, I played the clip with her I think it's with her mom, and they're just it's just a very short clip I found on Facebook, and it's, it's very contagious with her laughing with her, I believe with her mother, joking about something. And, anyway, it's really tough to see that. So now, so at that time when we first covered this case, covered it a couple of times, we didn't know about the car because I figured the car's got to be a huge clue, right? Because she wasn't found in her car. She was found in this abandoned car. So maybe this car, whoever owned it, or if there was registration, maybe that would lead to the suspect or suspects. But obviously this case, at the very least, has 2 suspects, likely 3, maybe even more, but I think 2 to 3. And we'll kind of explain that. But so finally it was released. I think somebody got a hold of some documents which showed, talked about the car itself that she was found in, which was a 2007 or 2018 Chevy Malibu.
About the abandoned car had not been released to the public, but eventually the details about the car did get released. It was discovered.
And so these pictures were taken from a previous owner that has no connection to the case. Keep in mind, this car's moved around states. Somebody owned it in Texas, which is very interesting. There is some crazy connections that we're going to get into. Like I said, I'm really surprised more people don't cover this. So this is the car. Now, it got wrecked. So now it was going to be a salvage title car, which then a State Farmers Insurance would eventually own and I think auction out or something like that.
That it was a 2018 Chevy Malibu, but it had no registration and only a salvage title that was sold at an auction. This case still had a lot of secrets that the public hadn't heard yet.
Yeah.
The family would release new info about Vega's case that would shed light on previous events where Vega and another were victims of robbery.
Now, this is where we learned more details earlier this year, because remember, it already been a full year with nothing really going on in the case. And then the parents shared this, and I think the timing was kind of, because they had somebody arrested that we didn't know about at the time. So we go back in time before her murder. So she was murdered in April of 2023, but she had been working at that gentleman's club. I'm not sure how many years, assuming at least 3 years, because this happened in 2020. So this is very interesting because it's connected to everything. So Vega was returning home from her job sometime around 3:45. A man approached her in a parking lot, dressed in black with a mask, held her at gunpoint, demanding things. He took her iPhone, key fob, $1,500, debit card, and more. So he had this gun with a mask and demanding all this stuff from her, and she's trying to, comply. And this poor girl, 19 years old, and he wanted the phone, but she's having trouble unlocking it, I think, in the story. And then she gave all the things up with the iPhone unlocked, and he took off running. Because the man was wearing a mask, she could only identify him from his height, eyes, body type, and sound of his voice because he was talking. Mercedes was so terrified she actually never returned. Now, she was living at a different apartment complex, which we'll look at here. And so she moved to this Aubrey thinking she'd be safer. So it's like this poor girl gets robbed and is like, screw this, I'm out. I'm going to go, to this other place thinking it's safer. And then 3 years later, she gets murdered. But this is all ties together. Can somebody let me know in the chat? It keeps saying chat's disconnected and it comes back. That is weird. Is the stream going okay? Let me know in the chat, guys. I just want to make sure. Yes. Happy late birthday, Jennifer. God bless everything you do.
Her daughter, Mercedes Vega, had been robbed at gunpoint. And this is the first time Pillsbury is publicly talking about the violent crime.
How did you find out about what had happened?
About 5 o'clock in the morning, and I got a call. And it was from an officer.
Okay, thank you,
According to a Phoenix police report and court records, just before 5 a.m., Mercedes was on her way home from the gentleman's club where she worked. After she pulled into the parking lot of her apartment near 16th Street in Thomas, she got out of the car. And that's when a man wearing a mask and gloves pointed a gun at her, demanding she give him her phone, keys, and her bag containing money. Fearing for her life, Mercedes complied. He demanded her phone's password, and Mercedes' mom says she was then shoved to the ground while the suspect pointed a gun in her face.
She had gravel in her back, and I was trying to pick it out and put hydrogen peroxide on it.
Mercedes' friends remember the impact the attack had on her. She never returned to that apartment complex, immediately moving out, carefully choosing a new apartment in Tempe she felt was safer.
I remember.
Yeah, that is just so terrible. You only hear, friends of a friend that may have some kind of incident, but then somebody, it's just like lightning, you don't think lightning would strike twice, and here, this poor girl, being robbed at 19 years old at gunpoint, and then 3 years later. But this is all connected, and there's even more. I think there could be even maybe, at the very least, 3 arrests, maybe even 4, and we'll talk about it. But there's another incident that happened. So this was October 12th, 2020. Then something else happened to another coworker.
She was just...
Sadly, Vega was not the only one who would be a victim of this type of crime. Another dancer who worked at the same club would encounter a similar case.
So a month later, November 16th, another coworker that worked at that same gentleman's club, she had left. Now keep this, remember this, because there's something that's mentioned a couple times, and I'll talk about here in a second, where these girls are being targeted, in my opinion. Because remember, they're dancing, they're making money, they're bringing home cash, and so they're a perfect target, sadly. And so this girl, and she wanted to remain anonymous, this poor thing. As she parked her car in the parking garage, a man dressed in black jeans and wearing a mask, sound familiar, pointed a gun and attempted to steal her phone. Luckily, another person was driving by, spooked the robber, and he fled. This place had video surveillance, which showed the man walking to a white Chevy Impala with temporary tags. Luckily, they were able to trace it back to the perp. Oh, yeah, Daniel Robinson's. Yeah, that's another case. Yeah, I really hope they find him, that poor kid. So here is a map, and I know it's probably kind of hard to see, but I have these arrows here. So this is Tempe. This is the Gentleman's Club. This is where she lived here. But before that, she had lived in 2020. She lived, over here. And Cujo had a, so actually, before I get too far away, but the suspect that was involved in these two cases would be identified.
Car. The suspect approached her at gunpoint, taking off running when a passerby arrived.
It was interrupted. And fortunately, nothing was taken, and she wasn't
assaulted.
As investigators worked to solve the cases, Mercedes noticed activity on her cash apps. A person was trying to transfer money out of her account and into his. After police...
She was, but I don't think it has to do with like, so a lot of people did think, because it did kind of make sense. And I think this is why, if you heard me earlier talk about how it's a staged crime scene, and I think it was made to look like there was a stalker following her, and that's who killed her, and that's with the bleach and everything. But I think there's another motive, and we're obviously going to get to it here, but we have to kind of get the backstory. So December 15th, so that same year that we had the two robberies of, Vega and another coworker. Then finally, this idiot, Cujo, he was using Mercedes Vega's Cash app. And what he was doing was he was sending Cash app money from her account to his account. So obviously they went and looked, and she noticed that, oh, hey, my money's being taken. And so they were able to trace it to the account, which obviously was this guy, Cujo Young. And he had his real identity in the account. So it wasn't too hard to run his name and find out he owned a 2006 white Chevy Impala, which was seen obviously in one of the crimes. So on 12/15, they went to his address and arrested Cujo. During his arrest, he was armed. They found out that he actually returned to the Gentlemen's Club since the two incidences, and management ID'd his car. So it looked like what he was doing is he was waiting there for these girls to leave, knowing that they were probably, had money on them because they just got done working, and then he would go and rob them. Now, what's interesting is that he claims, and we'll kind of circle back to this because this is why I think there could be up to maybe 4 people involved in this. He claims that a guy named George, which I've been doing some research. I can't find a George, but I know people have. Maybe we'll find a George. But apparently, according to Cujo, he says a George that maybe either worked at the Gentlemen's Club or knew people there who to target. That's according to him. It could be BS and, but that's what he claims. But anyway. So now he's arrested. Now the only people that could identify him, obviously we have the one worker that was arrested, or that happened in November, but then we also have Mercedes Vega, who she heard his voice, saw his height, even though he was wearing a mask. And so this is where the motive starts to kind of evolve. Let me take a sip here. So before he was booked into jail, they did a photo lineup. And so they took a photo of him, and they brought Mercedes. I think they went to her apartment there, and they had this photo lineup. And one of the photos had Cujo in it. And they asked if she could identify, if the person that robbed her was in one of these photos. And she did. She said, yes, this is the guy who I believe robbed me. And so now she would be the main witness in his case. So now, and we'll kind of play out what happened here. But so he's facing multiple charges.
Young would be arrested, and Vega would be
the person to, seal the deal as a witness would be Mercedes Vega,
the witness.
Now, what's crazy is Cujo Young. For those who don't know this case, it's really sad because he had a bright future. He played basketball, and then he got into football, and he was working to be, he was in college football, and it looked like he was, going to try to go pro. And I don't know what happened. I know he had a death. His sister died. I forget what year exactly, but it was in the late 2010s when his sister died. I don't know if that's what kind of set him on a dark path, or maybe he didn't get into. There's still a lot more to be researched, but what's interesting, so his hometown is Chattanooga, Tennessee. Keep that in mind because that will come back around. He also played in North Texas, which is another, we'll come back to that as well. And then he ended up in Arizona.
Who would testify on behalf of both girls and identify the man responsible. But before she could ever ID Cudjoe Young, Mercedes Vega would be brutally murdered. This could be a motive of revenge and witness tampering.
So we're going to play an article here
account
about how he was awaiting trial. And, of course, she was the witness to, kind of ID him. And she was even going to do an impact statement. I had a letter written.
And learned the suspect's vehicle information, they were led to Cudjoe Young, pictured here in his University of North Texas football uniform. Mercedes identified him in a photo lineup, and Young was charged with armed robbery and attempt to commit armed robbery.
Mercedes was
That's scary.
a brilliant person and very observant.
Following Young's arrest, he posted his bail, $30,000 in Mercedes' case and $15,000 in the Scottsdale case.
This is a horrible situation.
I can't believe that. Robbing somebody, two people, $30,000 and $15,000.
That my daughter went through, not only once, but again when she was murdered.
Mercedes would never get to see justice. As she and her family awaited trial, she was murdered.
So he would make bail. He was arrested December 15th in 2020. He would be released just before Christmas with the $30,000 and $15,000 bail. He was put on an ankle monitor. So this is where it was like, because they thought maybe he could have been directly involved, but apparently there is kind of conflicting reports on how long he actually had there's one report that says he still had the ankle monitor on when she was murdered. And then there's some that say he wasn't. So we're not completely sure. I'm sure that will be straightened out eventually. But he was also, during that time that he was out on bail, he was selling pills, and in my opinion, we'll get to the motive. And then, of course, the other players, because obviously this was something that was a lot of moving parts.
The night of April 16th, 2023, Mercedes was last seen walking to her car in the parking garage of her Tempe apartment complex, the apartment she moved to after she was robbed.
So this was a video that somebody did. I don't know if this is from the family or what, or somebody that just lived there that did this for somebody. But so this is kind of what it looked like in the parking lot.
This would be the perspective of Vega as she would walk to her car, unknown to Vega that at least one or more suspects were waiting for her just as approached her Dodge Charger, which was parked in the back in the area. The attacker would hit Vega likely in the head, which left blood at the scene. She would then be abducted and taken away. Somebody else involved would have taken her car and abandoned it 2 miles away.
So it's really sad that her attacker or attackers were waiting, likely be around her car, behind her car, and I'm assuming they would have had obviously a vehicle, so there had to have been likely two people there because her car would be driven out and the suspect's car, because obviously, unless they walked there, I'm assuming they had a vehicle there as well. This is where it gets so weird. I've always kind of wondered, like, why did they take her car in the first place if they already had a vehicle?
Forensic testing
but I think I have
in the
a theory on
Mercedes Vega
that.
murder case shows the young woman was attacked in her apartment parking garage one day before she was found burning alive in a car.
Late tonight, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office confirmed that blood found in that parking garage is a match to Mercedes. Her body was found last year. Our true crime correspondent, Brianna Whitney, has been on this case from the very beginning. Brianna, what did you find out today?
Yeah, so this new information confirms Mercedes Vega was attacked and badly hurt inside the parking garage seconds after we see her here walking to her car on surveillance footage. That's the last time she was seen alive. Her parents believe the little bits of new information we're learning means her murder is closer to being solved, but it's unfolding at a time where they must also be Mercedes' voice in a different court case where she was a victim years before her death.
New tonight, sheriff's deputies confirming blood found on the ground at Mercedes Vega's apartment complex next to her parking spot in April 2023 was a match to her.
Based off the way the car is parked and where the blood splatters were, I believe she was turned backwards and opening her door, and they hit her from behind.
Mercedes' parents, Erica and Tom Pillsbury, say shortly after she was found burning alive in a car off the I-10 near Tonopah, they went back to the Aubrey apartments in Tempe to retrace their daughter's steps. Erica says she saw a tennis shoe blood print and had hoped it wasn't Mercedes because she often wore heels or flip-flops. But when they saw the surveillance footage of her walking to her car in the parking garage on April 16, 2023, her heart sank.
I saw that she was wearing tennis shoes. It completely further confirmed to me that it was.
So I'm gonna fast forward because this kind of recaps, what happened. But she obviously was hit over the head. There was some blood that was left at the scene, and it looks like she even stepped in it. So there was kind of a footprint that was in her blood. And then she was either put into her car. Actually, I think she was probably put in the suspect's car. And I'll explain why, because I don't think they would risk taking a body, or because obviously she was still alive when they parked her car. And I don't think they would risk taking a girl out on this kind of street, because it's a very busy street. Like, it's like kind of a college area town right there. And it's just wild that they would do that. So I don't think they would have had her body in her car. But that's where he had robbed the two girls early years ago. And then obviously she being the main witness to testify against this guy would mean that that would be motive.
Took her life in the most heinous of ways.
Cujo Young was out on bond at the time of Mercedes' death, and court records show he may have had an ankle monitor. The I-Team asked whether MCSO has investigated potential links between the robberies and the homicide investigation, and about the ankle monitor. A spokesperson says they, quote, will not comment on this or any other possible connects at this point. In a May 2023 hearing,
the victim in one of the cases died about a week ago of something presumably unrelated.
Young's attorney asked to withdraw from his case, delaying his trial for armed robbery.
Yeah, so there was issues with lawyers. I'm assuming he was either getting rid of his lawyers, they weren't getting along, so he had these trial dates set, and they just kept getting pushed back, which was terrible for the family, because after she was murdered, the mother was gonna, whenever he was gonna be, convicted and sentenced, she would be there to read the impact statement that her daughter had written that she was going to do, but never got to because she was murdered. So I think this was a motive, in my opinion, and we're gonna see connections here to the other players, because again, obviously, we've kind of already known this for months now. And now there was arrest last week,
the situation,
which we're going to get
the
into.
ethics question that I'm dealing with and wrestling with. And I was instructed by my ethics counsel that I have a mandatory a duty to withdraw.
And in November of 2023, he was arrested in a Tempe police narcotics operation, accused of facilitating a large-scale drug transaction involving around 40,000 pills containing fentanyl. 11 other defendants have been charged in the case, and while some have been offered plea deals, Young has not. He's been held without bail ever since.
I'm very grateful that he's sitting with no bond.
Young was supposed to go to trial for the 2 armed robbery cases this week, but in a new development after changing attorneys again, it's now been pushed to October.
We all just miss her so much.
Mercedes is no longer here to aid in his prosecution.
In honor of my daughter, I will be there every single day in court.
Good for her.
Wow. I don't even know where to begin, but first of all, do we know if there were any other victims?
It's a good question. So we've learned that actually about a year before Mercedes and the Scottsdale woman were robbed, a third dancer at the same
Actually, it was a couple of years before, so I'm going to skip that because they kind of misreport it. A little bit more on Cujo, then we're going to get into the new arrest because I know people are here kind of wanting to know who's the new
The state, on the other hand,
suspect.
wants the trial date moved up. Young is due back in court in August, and right now the trial is set for October.
So then I forget, I put a screenshot on this, but I wish I would have got the screenshot of the date. I think this was like late summer or it was summertime when I got this, but this is all we had. And this was huge for those that have been following the case. So remember, this is now after Cujo. So then they said to ABC 15, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office told ABC detectives have identified persons, plural, of interest in the case, meaning besides Cujo. So that was huge. But then, of course, then there was, some silence until this past week.
Wake up every morning.
Be quiet.
The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office says the 22-year-old was found dead in a burning car off I-10 near Tonopah.
All right, let's
hung out of a line.
Through.
We'll come back to the timeline and theories. So let's jump to the arrest, and then I'll come back because, like I said, there's so many moving parts in this. It's pretty wild. All right. Okay. All right, so here is the update with the recent arrest, and then we're going to kind of connect it together because, like I said, there's still more, probably at least another suspect. But here is the arrest that happened. It actually happened on November 11th, but they didn't report it until, I think it was a week later, so like the 18th, somewhere around in there. It's about a week ago.
Case. 22-year-old Sincere Hayes tracked down in Tennessee last week, and officials are now.
So if you missed the name, I kind of had to fast forward so that I don't get copyrighted. But it's called. His name is Sincere Hayes.
Now working to extradite him back here to Arizona. I-Team reporter Bianca Bono joins us live in studio. So Bianca, what do you know about this suspect?
Well, in the last hour, we've received a copy of his waiver of extradition stating he's facing a first-degree murder charge.
Hey,
Still,
June.
we know that more arrests in connection to Mercedes Vega's murder are coming. But we have learned that at just 22 years old, this suspect has an extensive criminal history. We've also learned that he's from the same Tennessee city as a different suspect accused of robbing Vega at gunpoint before she was killed.
Records from Tennessee and Alabama obtained by the 12.
So if you remember, they just mentioned Tennessee, because remember, this murder happened in Arizona. But these kids that we're going to talk about, or these suspects, Cujo, he also, remember his hometown, for those who have been here the whole time, his hometown is Chattanooga, Tennessee. And as you hear, he's got this guy here that's being arrested, and they believe he is the main suspect. Even though there may be others, they believe he is like the main guy that committed the brutal murder of this poor girl.
News I-Team shedding light on the suspect at the center of a high-profile murder case in Arizona.
Thank you so much, Jude. God bless you.
To know that the
the player that probably had the most to do with it is in custody.
22-year-old Sincere Hayes was arrested by the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit in connection to the gruesome death of Mercedes Vega. Vega was last seen in April of 2023, walking to her car in the parking garage of her Tempe apartment. Records show the 22-year-old woman was tortured and ultimately found inside of a burning car on the I-10 freeway near Tonopah hours later. Her case unsolved for more than a year and a half. An agonizing wait for her parents.
It's a terrible, horrible, horrific club to be a part of. Losing a child there's no words.
Vega's horrific attack was at the hands of multiple suspects, but Hayes is the first arrest announced by authorities. The 22-year-old from Chattanooga's criminal history as an adult dates back to at least May of 2021 when he was arrested in DeKalb County, Alabama. He was indicted the following February for intentionally receiving a stolen gun. Hayes has a criminal...
So obviously one of the things that we don't know how they got to these suspects. We know Cujo because obviously he, was identified and, but we don't know if he was actually directly involved because he likely had an ankle monitor on him. So in my opinion, I think this was possibly, and I'm just speculating, possibly a murder for hire. Because obviously she's a witness in the case. And obviously he's on an ankle monitor, so he can't, go out and commit it. Although we don't know if he was involved, it's still possible. But anyway, we'll get more into it because there's still more to it.
A record in his home state of Tennessee, too. Records show in May of this year, the Chattanooga Police Department responded to a shots fired incident and were ultimately led to Hayes, who was found with multiple weapons, one of which was stolen. He was arrested, then released on a $5,000 bond. Weeks later, he was arrested again by the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office for driving under the influence and speeding, and again was found illegally possessing a firearm.
State versus Young.
Hayes' arrest in connection to Vega's death comes as Cujo Young is still awaiting trial for allegedly robbing Vega at gunpoint in 2020, 2.5 years before she was killed. Young is also from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and at the time of her death, Vega was aiding in his prosecution. 12 News has repeatedly asked MCSO if the cases are connected, but they have declined to comment.
I believe that we are very, very close to having all parties arrested.
Yeah, she was a witness and
attempted to speak with residents at Hayes' last known address, but nobody answered the door today. It's worth noting, with regards to his 2021 case out of Alabama, the district attorney there determined they would no longer prosecute him. An Alabama court staffer today told me the dismissal came after an investigator on that case was arrested themselves. That dismissal happened on April 10th, 2023, 7 days before Vega was killed. We're live in studio. Bianca Bono, 12 News.
Sounds like, we still have a lot to learn on this case and exactly what the motive and everything like that. Bianca, thank you for that. All right.
So here's just a small rap sheet. Obviously, they just went over it, but, this arrest with the Sincere Hayes, I'll just call Hayes. It's a weird first name, but theft of property, possession of a handgun, DUI. I mean, he's got a rap sheet. But the interesting thing is what's the connection to, Mercedes Vega? Well, he obviously he has a connection to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where is same with Cujo Young. And here is a Facebook, I think this is Facebook, and I thought this was very interesting. Now, this is taken in 2017, so well before the murders, but I thought this was very interesting because look what they're standing in front of, for those that have been following the case. That is a Chevy Malibu. Now, this looks more, because obviously if this is 2017, she was found in a 2018 Chevy Malibu. And this looks more like a 2016. Looks more like an 8th generation Chevy. It could be a 9th generation, but I'm pretty sure it's an 8th generation. Whereas I know for sure the 2018 is a 9th generation. But anyway, I thought it was very interesting. Now, obviously, it's not the same Malibu because it's obviously 2000. It's an earlier model. But one of the reasons I thought maybe there was a connection is there was a bullet fired because the poor girl was shot in the right arm. And now, in the evidence, again, we don't know a lot about the evidence, but she was shot in the arm. It went throughout the back of her arm. And it said no bullet recovered, but we don't know, what does that mean? Like, did they not recover the bullet, but they recovered the shell? Or just at the time they didn't see the bullet and they just said no bullet recovered, but they did actually find that. Because I think it's interesting that, this guy's got a lot of gun charges. So I wonder if maybe that led them back to that way. There's several ways that they could have connected. There could have been evidence left in this car, even though it was halfway burnt to the ground. There's also evidence that could have been left in the Dodge Charger. Now, this car that it was abandoned, I thought it was very interesting. This is such a weird connection. For those that really deep dive this case, is this owner of the car that was abandoned, that was a salvage title, which, was maybe bought in auction and maybe someone stole it or maybe someone was just going to use it for parts. But anyway, whatever the case, it's interesting. The owner, one of the original owners of this car, lived in Irving, Texas. Now, obviously, this name I don't think this person has anything to do with the case, but it's interesting that Cujo was in North Texas for a while in 2018, along with that car. Irving's up here, or vice versa. Again, there's some really crazy little connections that I was deep diving. So he went to the college up here, and less than 40 minutes away is Irving, Texas, where the owner lived. So I don't know if they knew that person or not. But again, there's the Chevy Malibu. And I thought that's so weird that here's a picture of the main suspect, and even though it's not the same Chevy Malibu, she would be found in a Chevy Malibu. So I don't know. Maybe they bought that to put parts in this Chevy Malibu that he had, or I don't know. Then we have the connection of the two kids, Cujo and Hayes. And this is where they lived in Tennessee, just 23 minutes from each other. So clearly they probably knew each other or ran with a crowd. And there's a picture of the home, and there's the Chevy Malibu. Again, not the one that she was found in, but the one that's pictured here. Again, just really interesting.
Hayes tracked down in Tennessee last week, and officials are now working to extradite him back here to Arizona. I-Team reporter Bianca Bono joins us live in studio. So, Bianca, what do you know about this suspect?
Well, in the last hour, we've received a copy of his waiver of extradition stating he's facing a first-degree murder charge. Still, we know that more arrests in connection to Mercedes Vega's murder are coming. But we have learned that at just 22 years old, this suspect has an extensive criminal history. We've also learned that he's from the same Tennessee city as a different suspect accused of robbing Vega at gunpoint before she was killed.
Records from Tennessee and Alabama obtained by the 12 News I-Team shedding light on the suspect at the center of a high-profile murder case in Arizona.
It does give us some piece to know that the player that probably had the most to do with it is in custody.
22-year-old since.
And that's interesting that they say that. So because obviously they may know a little bit more about the case. And that's interesting because at least two people are involved. At the very least, two people directly involved, because there's all these cars. And for those that may be confused about it, I do have an overview showing how the cars could have moved. So I'll show that here in a minute, kind of explaining that. But that's interesting that they say that. That means they're saying that like they got the main guy that they believe did, the heinous act.
The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit in connection to the gruesome death of Mercedes Vega. Vega was last seen in April of 2023, walking to her car in the parking garage of her Tempe apartment. Records show the 22-year-old woman was tortured and ultimately found inside of a burning car on the I-10 freeway near Tonopah hours later. Her case
thank you,
unsolved
Louise.
for more than a year and a half. An agonizing wait for her parents.
It's a terrible, terrible, horrible, horrific club to be a part of. Losing a child there's no words.
Vega's horrific attack was at the hands of multiple suspects, but Hayes is the first arrest announced by authorities. The 22-year-old from Chattanooga's criminal history as an adult dates back to at least May of 2021 when he was arrested in DeKalb County.
Now, we're going to hear something very shocking, and it breaks my heart to hear this. I'm going to play this because, again, this guy had a bunch of charges. We just talked about, DUIs, gun charges, through different states, and he had this one in Alabama. I'm not sure the year, or no, was it Alabama? Anyway, he is going to be charged in April of 2023. Listen to this. This is just truly heartbreaking because this may have changed things.
Alabama. He was indicted the following February for intentionally receiving a stolen gun. Hayes has a criminal record in his home state of Tennessee, too. Records show in May of this year, the Chattanooga Police Department responded to a shots fired incident and were ultimately led to Hayes, who was found with multiple weapons.
So this year, he's just been causing havoc, shooting up stuff, possession, all that. So this guy is just, has no care in the world. And it's just shame that they didn't just put these guys away earlier.
Of which was stolen. He was arrested, then released on a $5,000 bond. Weeks later, he was arrested again by the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office for driving under the influence and speeding, and again was found illegally possessing a firearm. Hayes' arrest in connection to Vega's death comes as Cujo Young is still awaiting trial for allegedly robbing Vega at gunpoint in 20...
Is that low? I can turn it up. It sounds pretty loud to me. I'm sorry. I'll turn it up. Let me know in the chat if you guys can hear that.
2.5 years before she was killed.
Should be pretty loud.
He's also from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And at the time of her death, Vega was aiding in his prosecution.
I think that might be on your side, baby.
If the cases are connected, but they have declined to comment.
I believe that we are very, very close to having all parties arrested.
And the NBC affiliate in Chattanooga attempted to speak with residents at Hayes' last known address, but nobody answered the door today. It's worth noting with regards to his 2021 case.
Okay, now listen to this. Hopefully you guys, okay. Oh, Mother of Dragons, good to see you. That's a great name. Can't wait for the next House of Dragons. Okay, so low here. Okay, so you hear me fine. Yeah, that's weird because on my board it says everything's all up. Okay, but this is very tragic. So this is still talking about this new arrest, but he had a prior charge and they were gonna, obviously put him away for something, and then listen to what happened and the time that it happened.
Case out of Alabama, the district attorney there determined they would no longer prosecute him. An Alabama court staffer today told me the dismissal came after an investigator on that case was arrested themselves. That dismissal happened on April 10th, 2023, 7 days before Vega was killed. We're live in studio. Bianca Bono, 12 News. Told me the dismissal came after an investigator on that case was arrested themselves. That dismissal happened on April 10th, 2023, 7 days before.
Can you believe that? So whatever happened in that case, the investigator, I don't know if he was planting evidence. I have no idea. I'm just speculating on something. But so he could have been arrested and maybe she would have never been murdered. Again, we just may never know. But still, just to hear that a week before. Oh. That's heartbreaking.
Vega was killed. We're live in studio. Bianca Bono, 12 News.
So here is the piece of crap. Before I play this, let me, for those that want to know how it all kind of happened, let me just play this. I believe there's, I believe there's two main scenarios. Obviously, there could be a branch of scenarios, but I think this is like the two likely main scenarios, and then we'll listen to him, and then we'll finish up. Thank you to everybody in here, and thank you to all the mods. But here is how I think it happened, at least one scenario. Like I said, I thought it was very interesting. So she, somewhere between 7 and 8, she went to Chipotle. So I do wonder, now again, I think the motive, in my opinion, let me know that if you've been following this, what you think in the chat. But I think this was a murder for hire, clearly, because Cujo couldn't, he's on an ankle bracelet. He knows, clearly has connections to that Sincere Hayes guy, and knows he's, clearly has a bad background. And then, so maybe he hires him, maybe through the pills, who knows? I mean, if he's got 40,000 fentanyl pills, who knows what he's making selling that stuff. So maybe this was a murder for hire. And so he hired at least 2 guys. It'd have to be at least 2 people, multiple vehicles involved. And I'll show kind of how this would have to take place. So one could be, like I said, she was leaving Chipotle. Maybe she was being followed. They knew where she was living. And so I believe one scenario could be that after she left this Chipotle, one guy would have had a car parked nearby. Because the whole dumping her car off at the culinary dropout makes no sense. Because clearly they had another vehicle. So I think they may have had another vehicle nearby. I don't know. This is where it gets weird. Like, there's still more mystery to this of how they pulled this off. But so here's her Dodge Charger. She's leaving. They could have followed her from the Chipotle, and this is another suspect car. So they're waiting. Then they attack her. One would be with her in her car, and then I think another suspect would be in the suspect's car with her, holding her at gunpoint or something. And then they follow each other out, because clearly they would drop her vehicle off, so that means there's got to be another vehicle. This is where it gets really kind of interesting. This is a bar and grill. So they would drop her car off, but I don't, because there's surveillance footage. So I doubt, and this is look how busy this is. I mean, this is a busy area. And so I doubt that they would have her in her car and then like transfer her to another car out in the public like that. That's just my opinion. So I think they already had her in a different car, and they just dropped her car off that was maybe close to where they had the other car parked, which would be the Chevy Malibu, not the Chevy Impala, the Chevy Malibu, which it would be this yellow car here. And then they would go, because again, like I said, the Chipotle and the culinary dropout, it's not far. I forget how many blocks, but it's like 5-10 blocks. It's not far. So I do wonder if maybe they kind of just parked in one car and then they left, because they still need 2 cars, because they need the car that's going to be abandoned in fire, and then clearly nobody saw them walking down the interstate, because this interstate that they dumped her body, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. So, I doubt they'd just be walking along the freeway or off. I mean, it's still possible, but I think there was probably another car involved. So it tells me there's at least 2 to 3 people. Again, it's very convoluted, complex case with a lot of moving parts. The other one is they could have had the abandoned car somewhere close, which I would kind of lean more towards, because if it's a salvage title and it clearly didn't have registration, then I'm assuming that probably wasn't driven much, because that would have been pulled over. Yeah, so very weird. So anyway, here is the suspect. But again,
May of 2021, when
I think this is a murder for hire, and they claim they got the main guy that was involved, but clearly there's got to be at least one more. Maybe driving the vehicles, maybe also participated in the homicide. You know, they definitely kept this sealed. But here's this guy here.
And before I make any determinations, my understanding, Ms. Valenzuela, did you want to be heard as to release conditions or some other matter?
Your Honor, just the release conditions, and I would request to seal the warrant fact sheet at this time.
Okay. Okay. If you want to go ahead, please, and for argument for the warrant.
Your Honor, the grand jury already found probable cause on the charges that you see before you, and the commissioner there, based on the underlying facts that were heard by the grand jury, constituting the first-degree murder and the other charges, and the fact that he has previously, the only new information that was unknown at the time is he does have a felony conviction out of Georgia. He has 2 pending cases in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that are misdemeanors in that state. For both times he was armed, and this crime is a crime of violence, and resulted in a horrific death. This case, there's strong evidence for this defendant's involvement. And if the court has any other questions for me, I can answer them.
Sure.
Why seal it? Yeah, to me that's huge because clearly there's more people involved, D, so I think, there's clearly, obviously one, we've talked about it, at least one more person involved, because there's got to be, because there's multiple cars, so you got to have drivers, and clearly, I doubt Mercedes Vega was driving, because I don't know if they knocked her out, but so yeah, at the very least 2 people, maybe even 3, but they claim this guy's the main guy. So they sealed it because maybe they're still waiting to get evidence, and they don't want the details because obviously there's still a lot of details we don't know about this case. So it's kind of like the Richard Allen, case where they've, Delphi case where they kept it, sealed. Just so in case, if they had the right killer or whatever, they know if he's telling the story, and there are certain details that only the killer and the detectives know.
The requested bond, are you asking to go over and above the bond that's listed on the warrant, or are you satisfied with what was originally requested?
I'm satisfied with the original request, Your Honor.
Good to see you, Gail.
Okay. And would you like to be heard as to the other matter regarding sealing?
Your Honor, just because the fact that this is an ongoing investigation that involves other individuals, at this point, we would ask for the integrity of the investigation that the warrant fact sheet be temporarily sealed. So
I'm going to skip this forward a little bit.
Mr. Hayes, I'm going to let you speak, and I think you heard me talk about before when you're sitting in there, but not to talk about the facts of the case, whatever you think the facts of the case are, but there's been a recommendation by the state to affirm a $2 million cash bond that has been requested by this grand jury warrant. When it comes to the bond and the amount of the bond, do you have anything to say about that?
Just feel like that's unconstitutional.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Ms. Valenzuela.
So he said this is unconstitutional, but this guy has been causing a havoc I mean, he has got a rap sheet. I mean, we've kind of gone over, you name it. He's pretty much done it as far as, robbery, murder. That's what he's being charged for now. But before that, DUI, gun possession, shooting, you name it. It's pretty much done it. So I think this comes down to a murder for hire. That's my speculation. I mean, why else? And then I think they staged the crime scene. I think maybe there's two possibilities of why they parked their car. Because, again, they clearly had, at the very least, two cars. They had the white Malibu that was found on fire, that was abandoned. And then clearly they had another car to get there and leave with. So, forget where I was going with that. So yeah, multiple people involved, and I was reading something in chat that I was trying to answer. I know what I wanted.
I would like to help you out on the sealing issue. Here's where I stand technologically. In looking at my screen, it appears as if the only thing that I can seal at this time is the Form 4. I don't seem to have any other technological way.
Oh, yeah, I was talking about the murder for hire because the scene, because it's like, why would you go through all this trouble and the whole bleach thing? Like, that makes no sense. I think the whole bleach, I think it was literally a staged, staged crime scene. Pouring the bleach down her throat, making it look like she had been violated and they were trying to get rid of evidence. And this was, related to, like a stalker type thing. But of course, now knowing her backstory that she was going to be a witness, and then coincidentally, this witness, she dies, and then this witness is connected to this killer. I don't think it's a coincidence. And of course, he clearly had money, but he was obviously on an ankle monitor, and again, probably hired some people to get back at her for witness tampering, whatever you want to call it. But again, just terrible. Yeah, she was a witness, and so I think that was the thing. And then again, I think that's why they staged the crime scene to look like it, was kind of something else, when it most likely wasn't. And truly terrible what happened to this poor girl. But finally, just, for the holidays, I'm happy with the family because they said, this could be the second holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas without Mercedes. But now, at least hearing this with the arrest on November 11th for this guy, Sincere Hayes, and then more people to be arrested hopefully soon. The bleach thing, I think you could take it a couple different ways. Obviously, I don't want to get graphic, but could be, them trying to, act like she was violated, and that's just one theory, of course, Again, maybe we'll eventually know more but everything's obviously sealed, and the only connections we know is that they lived close to each other in Tennessee, Chattanooga, and then of course he's got the rap sheet that he does. And it's just again, just to finish up here, it's a shame because this guy here, this Cujo, I'm trying to find that little spot there. It's really a shame because this guy had a future. Like, this guy was like, like, again, he was playing basketball, and then he was in college, and it looked like he was, moving up and going to be this, amazing athlete. And then I don't know what happened. Maybe he got into the wrong crowd. I know his sister died somewhere kind of around in that area, the late 2017, 18, somewhere around in there. I know her sister died. I don't know if that has any connection, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. Maybe that set him on the wrong path. Who knows? But again, there's got to be a connection, and still more persons to be arrested, or at least one more. But at least they've got the main guy, and hopefully the dominoes just keep dropping, and this family will eventually get justice. Yes, and he's got a $2 million bill.
So unfortunately, due to the circumstances, I will deny state's request to seal the warrant fact sheet at this time, given the fact that this court does not have the ability to do so. I'm urging the state to do review. You're also not to return to the alleged scene of the crime, not to initiate contact with any alleged victim or witness, not to possess any weapons, drugs, or alcohol. Sir, do you have any questions for me?
No, sir.
Okay. Please step to your left for your paperwork.
Sad. Was it 200 mil?
Speak.
It was either 2 mil or 200 mil.
Constituting the first-degree murder out of Jordan.
The requested bond, are you asking to go over and above the bond that's listed on the warrant, or are you satisfied with what was originally requested?
I'm satisfied with the original request, Your Honor.
Okay. And would you like to be heard as to the other matter regarding...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was... But that's amazing. For those that have followed my channel, you know, we've kept an eye on that case. And this is 7 hours ago. Yeah, $2 million bill. Oh, no, Black Friday, it's coming. Yeah. So that's good news. Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, because there's a certain percentage. Yeah, that's still a lot. That's still a hunky chef. I'm just looking at chat real quick here. Oh, what happened to my monitor? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I always forget about the bill. Yeah, the percentage, but still, I'm glad they hiked that up. And hopefully the other guys that are involved get caught and this family gets justice. But what a great, you know, for the holidays, at least they get, you know, some movement in the case. So moving on this week, so I have had a lot of stuff sent to me involving the Sebastian Rogers case. So, and I mean a lot that I've got to kind of break down and do it delicately. But yeah, definitely, probably Wednesday we'll go live with Sebastian Rogers. I'll just say human trafficking could play a part in that case. Again, I've told you I have a source and been talking with them a lot lately. And what I've heard about that is very disturbing. But it's possible that Sebastian could still be alive. So we'll have to see. We'll definitely cover it Wednesday. Try to put as much as I can that has been shared with me together. I have to, again, do it delicately because, again, you know, don't know if it's a outside job or an inside job, but I can tell you he was abducted. You know, I'm still going to say, in my opinion, he was abducted, but from my sources, it wasn't a runaway. You don't run away without your shoes. They would have found some kind of sign of him. It's, running away in the middle of the dark. Like, you're going to get lost. It's not like he was super, I don't know how familiar he was with the neighborhood. It didn't sound like he was out, he was more of a homebody, because obviously with the autism, he liked, stability. Not to say he can't play outside, but, it's heavily wooded all the way around there. And I think he would be just running in circles, tripping around. There would have been evidence somewhere of him, falling down something, or who knows. So anyway, long story short, been hearing some pretty wild stories that do kind of connect with what I've heard in the Sebastian Rogers case. Ashley, good to see you. I think Dog was talking about doing... Yeah, I think I heard about that as well. I know. I need to kind of catch up on the latest. But yeah, we'll probably do it. Probably do it Wednesday. But yeah, I have to... Again, I've got a lot of information to go over that just... It's wild. It's wild. It involves another person that had been trafficked before, and this person believes that the same people that had trafficked him were involved with Sebastian Rogers. That's all. I'll just kind of leave that on a cliffhanger. And this all comes from a pretty good source. So, man. So I do think there's a good possibility. I pray that they do find him alive. On my live? Did Dog talk on your live? What, you should look into what Dog said on your live. It's so interesting. Really? Huh. I'm assuming about the videos and stuff with the cars. Get that dirt bag off. Show a little picture of beautiful Mercedes. Hey, Heather, whatever. Good to see you. AC says, speaking in broad terms, it's extremely unlikely for an autistic child to run away for all the reasons you just mentioned. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not an expert in autism. I had a cousin that was autistic. There's so many different forms, but yeah, it makes no sense. I think they would have easily found a clue, with a kid like that age. And again, you've got this forest almost surrounded. I would think he would trip, fall somewhere, probably would have been found hurt and hopefully alive if he had ran away, because, again, you're out there in the middle of the dark. It just doesn't make sense. I'm glad you cover cases some might ignore. Yeah, again, this is a case that was brought up to me by my mod, Jennifer. And yeah, I'm so surprised more people don't cover it. It's really a case that's got so many, and there's still so much mystery to it that we don't know. Eventually, we'll probably get answers, but there's still a lot. And yeah, it's a huge tragedy what happened to him. Oh, June, you're so sweet. I'm going to finish up, but maybe another night, but I don't want to press you on that. I do appreciate anybody, the donations. It does help the channel, but it's just amazing for you guys to hang out, and I do appreciate everybody. Thank you, angels. Oh, this is Mercedes' cousin, Zero. Prayers for your family, Zero. Again, I'm so happy, and I hope, all these people that were involved get the justice, and she gets the justice, and the family does, because I've covered this a couple of times this year, and I'm just blown away that more people haven't, because truly, it's a horrific case, but the moving parts in it are just wild. Oh, wow. Again, I'm happy for you, but I'm so sorry for what happened, and I do hope everybody gets the... I'm getting all these messages. Again, honored to have you in here, and I'm so sorry. Prayers for you and your family. But I'm so glad you guys are getting answers. Again, we followed it, and I hope these pardon my words, bastards get what they deserve, because what a beautiful girl with a bright future, and just breaks my heart. All right, guys. I wish I could do more. I usually only go an hour and a half, but we did kind of go over it, and we'll definitely keep an eye on this case, keep her name out there, because she is a beautiful woman and just such a terrible tragedy. So, happy holidays to you guys, to everybody in the chat. We'll be back Wednesday for Rogers, of course, because I've got all this stuff that I got to go over. But yeah. Yeah, and thank you to everybody in the chat showing their love to the family of Mercedes Vega. Such a beautiful person with a bright future that was snuffed out. So, God bless you. We will keep an eye on this story. If there's more, I'll definitely cover it again, because I know I'm just blown away. More people don't cover it. It is, again, there's just so many moving parts. And I hope everybody gets, people involved get caught. So with that, I am going to head out, guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your night, day, morning, wherever you're at. God bless you guys. Happy holidays. And we'll be back Wednesday, same time, 7 p.m. And then members of Patreons, I'll try to get some stuff out for you guys as well. So God bless you, you and your family. Thank you guys. And of course, to the mods, thank you guys for all the hard work you guys do. God bless.